Well, we're decidedly more upbeat than we were this time last year, both from an earnings perspective and from a demand perspective. Well, if you think about what was happening 12 months ago, we believed that the industry was on the verge of this massive wave of new capacity that was getting ready to inundate the industry essentially and put it in a position that it would be significantly oversupplied. Our expectation was that this level of oversupply would create a significant amount of intensified competition, and it would impact prices and margins, et cetera. But really, over the course of the last 12 months, we've seen one delay develop after another. So now we're looking at a series of delayed starts, which will really dampen the impact of this new capacity coming into the marketplace. Well, another area that's actually impacting operating rates is there's an interesting phenomenon developing, which is what I'm calling a disconnect between the start times associated with the ethylene projects that are coming up and the polyethylene projects, with the polyethylene projects coming up sometimes well in advance of the ethylene. And given that you can't make polyethylene without ethylene, this is going to put a constraint on the polyethylene production capacity and sort of effectively limit the operating rates. Well, demand is another area where we're more upbeat than we were this time last year. We just finished our balances, and it appears that we're going to finish up with demand forecasts of about 4.2% on an average annual basis over the next 5 years. This is about 1.4 times GDP, which is very healthy. But the really good news here is what's happening in China. If you think about what was happening in China this time last year, some of the economic tremors that were developing, we were quite concerned that a weakness in the Chinese economy would impact polyethylene demand in China. China is the single largest demand center for polyethylene globally, and frankly, if demand in China faltered, it would widen the gap between supply and demand that we were anticipating and further pressure prices and margins. China is held up, and we're currently looking at growth rates of about 1 times GDP for China over the next 5 years, and that's about 6.4% during that time frame. It would be incorrect to say that we won't be seeing any oversupply. We do see a dip occurring in the 17 and 18 timeframe relative to operating rates and margins, but the trough, as it were, is expected to be a relatively shallow trough, particularly in comparison with the expectations that we had a year ago when we thought all of this capacity was going to be hitting in 2016 and 2017. Now it's essentially been pushed out a couple of years. We've looked at many of the big projects that have been scheduled to come up around the world, and frankly, the average delay is about a year in time. So a significant dampening of this excess supply condition. Overall thoughts on the market is that it looks like it's going to be a very solid market here for the next several years. Producers, particularly in North America and the Middle East, look to be doing very, very well, and continued strength in Asia and Europe as well. So a good market to be in.